In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon His last and beloved Messenger Muhammad, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all. The title of this episode is How to Design an Optimal Heat Exchanger from the Noble Quran. Now, brothers and sisters, when I say a heat exchanger is a device which exchanges heat, it transfers heat between two fluids. One of them is hot and the other one is colder than the first fluid. So it's a device to exchange heat, and as you can see on the screen, this is a heat exchanger used to transfer heat between two fluids, a hot and a cold one. Now in this episode I will show, Allah God willing, how to design a heat exchanger from the last revelation of Allah God to be with the Noble Quran, how to design an optimal heat exchanger by pondering, reflecting upon the verses of the Noble Quran. Now, when I say this, okay, we need to go to the Noble Quran to learn the optimal design for a heat exchanger. So where to start? Allah God Almighty teaches us the starting point in the Noble Quran in chapter 51 verse 21, which states, "And in your own selves will you not then see?" So Allah God Almighty urges us to ponder and reflect upon our body and the design of Allah God Almighty for the human body. Why? Because Allah also states in the Noble Quran that He created humans in optimal form. It's optimized, your body is optimized. So when you think about the engineering of the human body, and since the human body contains mechanical systems, chemical systems, objects that can handle load, so you can learn the optimal design parameters and concepts from the human body. Again, since the human body is designed in optimal form, so Allah God Almighty gives you a textbook in optimal design. Your body, your human body, is a textbook in optimal engineering. So when you study the chemical systems in your body, the mechanical systems, in effect, you are learning design concepts to be applied in industrial use. So, if we think, where do we have a heat exchanger in the human body? Now, the main location where you exchange heat in your body is the skin. Because if we think about human skin, we see that the skin is an interface between a hot region, the blood beneath the skin, which is hot, about 37 degrees centigrade, and you have usually a colder region at the outside. So, and the exchange of heat occurs between the inner region of the skin and the outer region, and the skin is the interface. So in effect, the skin is a heat exchanger. So by studying the design of Allah God Almighty over human skin, we can learn the best design parameters and concepts to design an industrial heat exchanger. So let's start. Now, if we think about the morphology of the outer surface of the skin, now if we think about and ponder, and you see, brothers and sisters, the way is very simple. It's just to ponder upon the Quran, the last revelation of Allah God to people, and the human body, the creation of Allah God Almighty. So it's very simple. It doesn't need doctorate degrees, PhDs, masters. It's just pondering upon the Quran and the human body. And this is a miracle in the Noble Quran, that the Quran can be understood by people with their various backgrounds and various kind of education. Now, so coming back to the skin, we see that the skin has an outer surface shaped like a water wave, a sinusoidal surface. Now, if we think about this, we can deduce that a sinusoidal surface, a surface having a shape of a water wave, it has a larger surface area compared to a flat surface. So the skin, the first design concept we learn, that Allah God Almighty teaches us that we need to design the interface between the hot and the cold fluid having a wavy surface, a surface like a shape of water wave, a sine wave, because that will produce maximum surface area and thus faster heat transfer. Because when you have a larger surface area, you have a faster heat transfer. Like for example, you have hot water, you spill it on a large surface, and thus you have a fast exchange of heat. So we see that Allah teaches us that we need to have an interface having a wavy surface, like a sine wave, like a water wave, that will increase the surface area and thus maximize heat transfer. Now, the other design concept we can learn from the human skin, that we find on the skin, there are objects on the skin, hairs. We see the hair on the human skin. Now what's the design concept? What's the importance of hair on the skin? Now when I thought about this, with the guidance of Allah God Almighty, you can see that Allah designed the hair on the skin in a hexagonal pattern, such that each three hairs, they are arranged in a triangle, and triangles with each other, they produce a hexagonal shape. So this hexagonal arrangement of hairs on the human skin, what's the importance? Now to know the importance, we need to compare two surfaces. As you can see on the screen, we have a body having a surface that does not contain projections. Now in this case, the atoms represented by the circles, the air atoms, the fluids of the atoms of the other fluids, they will accumulate on the surface. If a surface has no projections, then the air atoms surrounding that surface will accumulate on the surface, and it's like layers of atoms, and thus the heat need to transfer through these layers. So this will take time, and thus we have slow transfer of heat. Now compare this case to a surface containing projections. Now these projections, the hair, they vibrate. The hair, they have this kind of vibration, and this vibration, it breaks up this layer of atoms, and thus you have a high transfer of heat, fast transfer of heat. How? Such that the hot atoms that took from the heat of the body, they will be pushed out of their place, and a colder atom will come in their place. So this hair, it breaks up the layer of atoms on the surface, and thus the hot atoms will move quickly and come colder atoms. It's an enhancement technique for heat transfer. So Allah teaches us that we need to put projections on the surface to break the boundary layer, the layer of atoms that accumulate on the surface. And this is a major design concept, because in mechanical engineering they have a problem with the boundary layer effects. So Allah gives us a solution for the boundary layer by putting projections on the surface. They vibrate, which breaks up this boundary layer, and thus enhances mass and heat transfer. And we see the mercy of Allah in this, because when the heat transfer is maximized, there is no pain in the body, because if you have a slow heat transfer, then the heat will accumulate in the body, and you will feel discomfort and pain. But Allah Almighty is the most merciful. He puts this mercy mechanisms in the human body that will enhance heat transfer, will accelerate heat transfer, and thus you don't feel pain and you feel comfortable. And Allah says in the Quran that if you count the blessings and if you count the blessings and mercy of Allah Almighty, you are not able to fully grasp and fully count it, the mercy of Allah Almighty. Now, coming to a third design concept in the human skin, which can be applied, the thickness of the skin. Now, if we think about the thickness of the human skin, it's very thin. Now, this small thickness of the human skin, it reduces the resistance to heat transfer, which yields faster heat exchange. So this small kind of thickness for the human skin, it reduces the resistance for the heat to be transferred between the two fluids, and thus you have a faster heat transfer. So Allah teaches us that we need to make the interface between the two fluids as thin as possible, such that it would not resist heat to be exchanged between two surfaces, between two fluids. Now the fourth design concept that can be learned from human skin, the shape of the skin. Now if we think about the shape of our skin, we see that it's smooth. It does not contain sharp corners. You have all smooth kind of design for the skin. Now this is very important because it eliminates a phenomena called hot spots. Now if you have sharp edges in a surface and you have heat transfer that surface, these sharp edges, the sharp points, they become very hot, they're hot spots, and that can damage the material and reduce the efficiency of heat transfer. While we see Allah Almighty design of human skin, it's all smooth, and thus no kind of creation of hot spots, and thus there is no pain, another blessing of Allah Almighty, another mercy, and a faster efficiency and a higher efficiency for heat transfer. So the skin has a smooth shape which ensures no formation of hot spots, and thus no pain and smooth flow of heat, which yields faster heat exchange. So we see, brothers and sisters, how Allah Almighty teaches us out of mercy from the Noble Quran everything we need, so that the believer would be the teacher of others and not the one on the receiving end. Now let me give the following example on how to implement these design concepts in industrial heat exchangers. Now what I did here is that I designed a heat exchanger in the computer using simulation programs, and the computer can give me the heat transfer and the comparison between two designs, one with these modifications and another without. So let's see this first modification as an example. Here we have a surface of heat exchanger having a wavy surface like water waves, as we learn from human skin. Now the computer calculated the heat flux from this surface and gave that for this situation, for this interface having a hot fluid beneath it and a colder one above it, it gives the maximum heat flux of 47 watts per meter square for this design. Now I compared this design with a heat exchanger having a flat surface, as you can see on the screen, and the computer gave the heat flux for this flat surface to be 37 watts per meter square. So we see there is an enhancement from 37 watts per meter square to 47 watts per meter square, which is about 30% increase. There is a 30% increase in heat flux just by modifying the surface to have the shape of a water wave, sinusoidal surface. So just by applying one modification learned from the human skin, there is a 30% increase in heat flux and heat exchange. So what about if all of these modifications were put in place? So this is a proof and a demonstration on how to learn design concepts of the human body and to apply them. And Allah Almighty wants the believer to show this to people, to bring people closer to the Noble Quran. And Allah states in the Noble Quran that be pious to Allah Almighty and Allah will teach you, and Allah has knowledge of everything. And to know more details about this topic, please visit my website at www.quran-miracle.com, and you can email me at zquran@yahoo.com, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all.